All right, so if you're thinking of moving to Vancouver, I'm sure you've heard about the rain. You've been doing your research. Everybody talks about it. Everybody talks about how bad it is. Now, this video is going to explain exactly what it's like to live here, what the weather is like, what the climate is like. From my perspective, I've lived here my entire life, 47 years now, lifelong resident. I'm going to tell you exactly what to expect when you're living in Vancouver. Are you ready? Here we go. All right, number one is our mild climate. It's probably the most important thing to be aware of Vancouver, and the thing that so many people that come and stay in Vancouver love about this city is that it's extremely mild. It's kind of like, I've used it before, but this Goldilocks environment. Perfect, never too hot, never too cold. It's just about always right. So in the middle of summer, we can get temperatures, sort of the typical temperature gets into the 20s. You don't get extremes well into the 40s, although it did happen a couple of years ago. Typically, there's a heat wave that we get pretty much every summer that'll last maybe 2 weeks, and you'll get temperatures rising over the 30s, maybe 35. But for the most part, you're in the mid-20s. That's the typical temperature in the city of Vancouver. And the warmer months tend to be May through September. And that's basically mid-May, all of June, all of July, all of August, and then right through mid-September. It's a pretty reasonable amount of time. You're going to get, those shoulder months where not every day is going to be absolutely warm. In fact, right now it's the end of May, and this morning I think it was 12 degrees outside, but it warmed up. I'm looking out the window. It's nice and sunny, and it's I think it's about 18 degrees right now, but still not quite into those low 20s. And then July and August are going to be our hottest months, where we're most likely going to get those extreme for Vancouver temperatures well into the 30s. And as I mentioned, we had, I think what we called locally, or the media would call it, heat dome into the 40s a couple of years ago when everybody was scrambling for air conditioners and ice. But that was an extreme weather event for Vancouver. All right, and winters. What happens in the winters? Well, in the winter, our extreme, sort of typical low temperatures around zero. In fact, I think it's 2 degrees for the city of Vancouver is the average low. So not bad at all, considering we're still in Canada and we're well into the northern hemisphere. Sort of exceptional cold is really about minus 15. I can recall a couple times in my lifetime where it got down to like minus 12, minus 15 roughly, but that's a really odd event. More sort of at an extreme for a couple weeks of the winter, you're going to see it around minus 5, but most of the time hovering just above zero. Okay, let's get down to the obvious one, rain. It rains approximately 146 centimeters annually in Vancouver, and that's city of Vancouver. That's higher than is typical in Canada, but it's not actually all that exceptional. I think, as an example, city of Toronto is about 100 centimeters of rain annually. And the typical number of days that we're seeing in a year is, I think it's around 160 days a year that have precipitation. And it's really not a heavy rainfall most of the time. Most of the year, if we have a rainfall, and even in the core of the winter, it's not like a tropical downpour. It's a relatively light rain, although it could get a little heavier. And in the middle of winter, it can also last a long time. So you can have a period of like a month where it's basically going to rain every single day. Not nonstop, but you will have rain for a relatively long period of time in the winter months. And most of that happens mid-October to mid-February. That's when you see sort of peak rainfall in the city of Vancouver. But then conversely, we have almost no rainfall in the months of July, August, and September. So those are very, very dry months. I think when many people think about Vancouver and the rainfall, they expect that it happens year round. But the truth is, the peak is in the winter. It trails off in the spring and in the fall. And in the summer months, almost non-existent. So you can look forward to that if you don't want to see rain all the time. So if the rain isn't scaring you away and you're still thinking of moving to Vancouver, reach out anytime. My contact information is there on the screen. I am a real estate agent that has helped hundreds of families move to this beautiful city, and I can help you if you're thinking of moving here too. Just reach out. We can have a conversation, get the ball rolling. Now let's get back to the video. And snowfall. It actually does snow in Vancouver, despite what people may think. The thing is that we don't typically get very heavy snowfalls. The snow is relatively light. You might get a period of a week to 2 weeks every winter where the snow sticks on the ground and it accumulates a little bit. Maybe there's 10 centimeters, maximum 20 odd centimeters, but snow sticking on the ground for that length of time is a bit unusual. What happens more often is that we get maybe 3 times a year, maybe it's 4, a snowfall that sits on the ground for a few hours or a day or two and then disappears as the temperature warms back up. It rarely sticks for very long, and we really don't get very heavy snowfalls. There's really just a couple times in my lifetime where, over a 24-hour period, I've seen 30 or 40 centimeters of snow fall in Vancouver. That's highly, highly unusual. And the main times that you're going to see snow are really mid-December to mid-February. Those are the months where it's most likely to happen. If you escape those months without snow, then you're most likely not going to see it. And what about sunlight? Being in the Northern Hemisphere, we do have a pretty significant variation in the amount of sunlight we get every day. In fact, it kind of reverses the amount of sunlight versus darkness, whether it's winter or summer. So in the winter months, in the very core of winter, you can have 16 hours of darkness, 8 hours of sunlight. Frankly, that can be a little overwhelming. Like, you can go to work for a month, not see the sun. Right? Like, you're going to work to your office job before the sun rises, and because there's only 8 hours of sunlight, you could be driving back home once the sun has set once again. And so those really dark months are from mid-November to mid-February. And then the best time are those summer months. In those summer months, we see 16 hours of sunlight and 8 hours of darkness, which is pretty magical. And I don't know, I find in those months, I get so much done and I have so much energy. And I remember as a kid playing like tennis at the local tennis court with my friends at like 11 p.m. because there was still light. And those months are typically, once it gets, those longer days, are mid-May through to mid-August. And most Vancouverites are just going to be outside in those months because those are the warmer months, those are the brighter months, those are the months with longer daylight hours. So we're making the most of those, as I think really most people are anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere. We got to use it when we got it. Real quick, if you're getting any value out of this video at all, give me a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it. And subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. I put out a new video every single week about what it's like to live in the city of Vancouver. So if you want to see more of me, hit that subscribe button and let's get back to the video. And lastly, I just wanted to point out that there are really strong regional differences in the climate and in the weather. And so what I've been talking about up to this point is for the city of Vancouver, but depending on where you are in the Lower Mainland, you might find there's nuances to this. And so the further north and east you go is typically darker and wetter. The further south and west you go is going to be brighter and drier. And so the driest location would be Tsawwassen. That's the area of the Lower Mainland that gets the least amount of rain, and it's actually a little bit warmer there as well. So I mentioned the city of Vancouver gets about 146 centimeters of rain a year. Tsawwassen only gets 100. And the number of days it rains in Tsawwassen is roughly half the number that it rains in the city of Vancouver. So it could be raining in Vancouver, but it's probably not going to be raining in Tsawwassen. So if you're looking for a drier location, think south and west, and really, anything south of Vancouver, whether it's Richmond or White Rock or Tsawwassen, those are areas that you're going to see less in terms of rain. On the North Shore of Vancouver is where you're going to see some of the most precipitation. It's going to be darker and wetter. And that's because you have the North Shore Mountains over above North Vancouver. And as the weather comes in off of the ocean, the clouds hit the mountains and they drop their rain on the North Shore, maybe on Vancouver, but most commonly on the North Shore, and then they rise over the mountains and keep going. So you see a lot of precipitation, and in fact, it's 250 centimeters of rain in North Vancouver, more days of rain as well. So if you're thinking of living on the North Shore, you want to be aware that you got to be ready for more rain. And so it's 250 centimeters of rain in North Vancouver, 150 roughly in Vancouver, and then about 100 in Tsawwassen. So you can see a very big variation depending on where you're looking. As you can see, the reality of living here is different than the stereotypes. The weather here, the climate, it's nuanced. It depends on where you are exactly. And that's one of the big reasons why it's so important to connect with a local expert. And that's what I am. I've helped hundreds of families move to the city of Vancouver. I can help you as well. I can make this a smooth transition and help you find your perfect forever home. So be sure to reach out anytime. We can get that ball rolling. If you got any kind of value out of this video, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of me, I put out new videos just like this one every single week, all about what it's like living in Vancouver and its surrounding suburbs. So be sure to subscribe. Thank you so much again for watching, and I'll see you on next week's video.